going to go. All right, hey, let's all stand. So our men's Bible study was in 1 John chapter 4, verses, but that's actually 1 John chapter 3 is where this song's from, so never mind. It doesn't match up. That's the Kiss song. Beloved, let us love one another. That's the wrong one. That's chapter 4. This is chapter 3. Behold what manner of love the Father has given unto us. Behold what manner of love the Father has given unto us, that we should be called the sons of God. Okay, here we go. Behold what manner of love the Father has given unto us. Behold what manner of love the Father has given unto us. Behold what manner of love the Father has given unto us. Behold what manner of love the Father has given unto us, that we should be called the sons of God. That we should be called the sons of God. Behold what manner of love the Father has given unto us. Behold what manner of love the Father has given unto us, that we should be called the sons of God. That we should be called the sons of God. That we should be called the sons of God. That we should be called the sons of God. That was solid, man. That was good. Thanks. All right, let's pray. Dear Lord, thank you for that love that you've demonstrated for us, that you would send your only Son to die for us and to call us your children when we believe in his name. We just thank you for what you've done for us, that you would bring us into your family, and that we would have that inheritance of heaven and eternal life. We just look forward to the day that we're with you, the hope that we have, and just pray that would be on our hearts as we serve you in the different areas that we live and the things that we do, and the people that we come across, that it would just be shown to them the hope that we have in being your children. So I just pray that would be, we would just be a light to this community, that people would see the joy that we have in you. And just pray for our evening tonight, that you would just be glorified as we sing to you, as we praise your name, and as we study your word, that you will just prepare our hearts to hear from you tonight. In Jesus' name, amen. All right, let's stand for one more. You guys want to get your hands together on this one? We'll really warm it up in here, okay? What a fellowship, what a joy divine, leaning on the everlasting arms. What a blessedness, what a peace is mine, leaning on the everlasting arms. Leaning, safe and secure from all alarms. Leaning on the everlasting arms. Oh, how sweet to walk. Oh, how sweet to walk in this pilgrim way, leaning on the everlasting arms. Oh, how bright the path grows from day to day, leaning on the everlasting arms. Leaning secure from all alarms, leaning, leaning, leaning on the everlasting arms. What have I to dread? What have I to fear? Leaning on the everlasting arms. I have blessed peace with my Lord so near. Leaning on the everlasting arms. Leaning, leaning, safe and secure from all alarms. Leaning, leaning, leaning on the everlasting arms. Leaning, leaning, safe and secure from all alarms. Leaning, leaning, leaning on the everlasting arms. It is hot. All right, you guys could be seated. Did you turn on? Yeah, that's what I thought. All right, cool. Well, it's going to cool off. I mean, these things are part of it too, but. He became sin, who knew no sin, that we might become his righteousness. He humbled himself and carried the cross. Love so amazing, love so amazing. Jesus Messiah, name above all names, blessed Redeemer, Emmanuel, the rescue for sinners, the ransom from heaven. Jesus Messiah, Lord of all. Sing his body the bread. His body the bread, his blood the wine, broken and poured out all for love. The whole earth trembled and the veil was torn. Love so amazing, love so amazing, yeah. Jesus Messiah, name above all names, blessed Redeemer, Emmanuel, the rescue for sinners, the ransom from heaven. Jesus Messiah, Lord of all. Sing, all our hope is in you. All our hope is in you. All our hope is in you. All the glory to you. Jesus Messiah, name above all names, blessed Redeemer, Emmanuel, the rescue for sinners, the ransom from heaven, Jesus Messiah, Lord of all. Holy fire, burn away my desire for anything that is not of you, but is of me. I want more of you and less of me. Let's sing it again, holy fire. Holy fire, burn away my desire for anything that is not of you, but is of me. I want more of you and less of me. Empty me. Empty me. Let's sing holy fire. Holy fire, burn away my desire for anything that is not of you, but is of me. I want more of you and less of me. Empty me. Empty me. Sing, fill me. Fill me with you, with you. Holy fire, burn away my desire for anything that is not of you, but is of me. I less of me that is not of you, but is of me. I want more of you and less of me. Empty me, Lord, empty me. Sing it again, empty me. Empty me, Lord, empty me. Sing, fill me. Fill me with you, 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 with you. Holy fire, burn away my desire for anything that is not of you, but is of me. I want more of you and less of me that is not of you, but is of me. I want more of you and less of me. The Spirit of the living God, fall afresh on me. The Spirit of the living God, fall afresh on me. Let's all stand. We'll sing that again. Spirit of the living God. The Spirit of the living God, fall afresh on me. The Spirit of the living God, fall afresh on me. Melt me, mold me, fill me, use me. Spirit of the living God, fall afresh on me. Sing again, Spirit of the living God. Spirit of the living God, fall Spirit of the living God, fall afresh on me. One more time, Spirit. Spirit of the living God, fall afresh on me. I'll pray. Dear Lord, thank you for this time. Pray that you would fill us afresh every day, every moment of our lives. We need your Spirit to fill our lives so that we can be used by you, so that we can walk in your ways, so that we can glorify you, and so we can understand your word. We need your Spirit to be in our lives every moment, so we don't turn back to our natural ways of the flesh, that we would just walk in your ways at all times. So just pray that you go before us now and teach us by your Spirit, your word, that it would teach us how to live, and that we would glorify you with our lives. In Jesus' name, amen. Is there anything to say? Say good evening to someone around you.
Hi. Good to see you all here tonight. What a beautiful day in the neighborhood, huh? Okay, let's see. Really quickly, a couple of announcements, and we'll see. Dave and Carolyn Schmidt, if you didn't see the update on their son, things are going well. They said that they think they got all of the tumor, and things went really better than the doctors expected. He kind of gave. I sent it out on the prayer teams, women's and men's. So anyway, that's going very well. So they said thank you so much for your prayers. And women's Bible study ending tomorrow morning Thursday mornings are ending tomorrow. And then the baby bottle drive still going until Father's Day. The volunteers for VBS and soccer camp, they did an announcement Sunday. They have sign-ups out there that you can get involved or see Kevin or Rena for the soccer, Kevin for the VBS. And we're having a few more weeks before we start out on the summer night series out on the patio. So, all that said, we're looking at June 17th right now. So we have some work to do here. Huh? When is the time change?
No, I mean for the summer night.
Oh, you mean 6:30? Yeah, I'm not sure yet. I wanted to talk to you guys again about it and see what your thoughts were after we're considering maybe doing it at 6:30 instead of 7. Who does that throw off Wednesday nights for on the summer night series? Anybody? Okay, you guys? Okay. There we go. All right. So anyway, we will be having dinners also throughout the summer, which is going to be a lot of fun. 2 Samuel, chapter 16. And last week we just about finished it, right? Chapter 16. Some of you might have thought we did finish it. Maybe we did read through the end of it, but we're going to start where I feel like we kind of left. So starting in verse 15. Meanwhile, Absalom and all the people of the men of Israel came to Jerusalem, and Ahithophel was with him. So going back now to Jerusalem, then in the next verse 16, Hushai also the Archite, David's friend, came also to Absalom. This was part of their plan. You remember? They were going to be, David talked to him, said, hey, why don't you go, instead of going with us, you're just going to waste your time. You're going to be a burden for us. Why don't you go back to Jerusalem and you be the one that kind of stands in the gap for us? And the gap is going to be whenever Ahithophel, which used to be David's commander, one of his kingpins, his right-hand man, very wise, very, very knowledgeable, and he now has jumped ship from David and has built a relationship with Absalom. Well, he wants Hushai the Archite to also do the same thing. Go and interject for us whenever Ahithophel starts giving some kind of counsel or something that's going on that will be taking place. The priests have been sent back now. Take the Ark of the Covenant back. You guys need to stay there. So when something is going on, you need to tell the priests. The priests then need to get the word to their 2 sons. And they need to take the 2 sons and get them to David and kind of keep them in the loop about what's going on. So you remember all that, right? Okay, good. It's some semi-fresh anyway. So he sent his friend. He came to Absalom, and that's exactly what Hushai starts to do. He kind of starts building this incredible relationship with Absalom with a complete false motive and reason. But he does a very good job. It says that Hushai said to Absalom, long live the king, long live the king. And so Absalom said to Hushai, hey, is this your loyalty to your friend? Why did you not go with your friend? And Hushai, again, trying to separate himself from David, he said to Absalom, no, but whom the Lord and this people and all the men of Israel choose, his I will be. They're all choosing you, Absalom, so I'm going to choose you as well. I'm going to be yours. And he says, and with you I will remain. Furthermore, whom should I serve? Again, trying to make his case a little bit more solid so it doesn't look so suspicious. He said, whom should I serve? Should I not serve in the presence of his son, in the presence of David's son? As I have served in your father's presence, in David's presence before, so will I be in your presence now. And then Absalom said to Ahithophel, give advice as to what we should do. Again, this was the scene where it changed, and now Absalom is beginning to get Ahithophel's first counsel to Absalom from verse 20 to the end of the chapter. And he says in verse 21, he says, give us some advice in verse 20 as to what we should do. And Ahithophel said to Absalom, go into your father's concubines, those 10 that were left back in Jerusalem in their house and their property. He left 10 of his concubines there. Ahithophel is telling Absalom to go and lie with them, have sex with them, to your father's concubines, whom he has left to keep the house. And all Israel will hear that you are abhorred by your father. In other words, what this is doing is it's showing and building confidence in Absalom's army and Absalom's people that, you know what, it's no longer about his dad. It's about him. Now, Absalom has always been about himself. Remember, this is going to be important for today because we're going to get through a lot today. Very important to remember that he was a good-looking young man. He had this long Fabio kind of hair that was just so, beautiful. And he knew that he was hot. He knew that he was a hunk. And so this is what he played on. He was constantly focused upon himself. We'll see some more particular moments of that where he really did think himself to be something, when the scriptures would teach us we're nothing. And he tells us not to think ourselves to be something when we're nothing. Well, he didn't get the message, Absalom. And as it goes on, it says, after he says to go into the concubines, in verse 22, he says, so then they pitched a tent for Absalom on the top of the house, and Absalom went in to his father's concubines in the sight of all of Israel. Now the advice of Ahithophel, which he gave in those days, was as if one had inquired at the oracle of God, like it was God's own words being given to Ahithophel to do this particular, what I would say, it doesn't say it here, but it's an immoral act and going against his father. And again, we talked about it last week at the end of why he might have wanted to do that, and it had everything to do with coming against David. By him going into David's concubines and having sexual relationships with them, it was definitely a strong leader moment that he was trying to prove to everybody he's not afraid of David. And you know what? It doesn't matter who's, they're mine. They're not David's any longer. I'm the king. And that's what he's been saying. And again, we said it was a slap in the face, a disgrace, an insult to his dad. And it was done in front of all of Israel, making, again, the future of reconciliation pretty much out of the question. The counsel that was being given was foolish, and it was destructive, and it was all motivated by bitterness. So coming to that very end of verse 23, where he tells us it was like the very oracles of God, so was all the advice of Ahithophel, both with David and with Absalom. Now again, this was fine counsel for Absalom if he's wanting to be the one that's standing out above the rest. If he wants to be the one that is going to be identified as being the leader, the king, and all of these other things that he's trying to be. And yet in the process of it all, we know, looking back to the last couple chapters, that Ahithophel was Bathsheba's grandpa. So we also knew there could have been an ulterior motive of why he was doing it. And I believe it has a lot to do with it. But not only did Ahithophel jump ship with David, being his right-hand man, being one that was a wise and knowledgeable individual, great counselor that he was for David for so long, there's no doubt that what had happened to Ahithophel's granddaughter, Bathsheba, is still something that he's out for revenge about in leaving David altogether. Well, it goes into chapter 17 now. Moreover, Ahithophel said to Absalom, so he's already now given him one bit of counsel that, again, nothing happened from, other than now, there's a whole different understanding on who David is and who Absalom is. And Absalom taking control of the things of what his father had left behind. Moreover, Ahithophel said to Absalom, now he's going for a second opportunity of giving him some counsel that he think would be very good and very wise for his next steps. He says, now let me choose 12,000 men, and I will arise, and this is Ahithophel talking. I will arise and I will pursue David tonight. And I will come upon him while he is weary and weak, as he's left Jerusalem again, right? He's in this place of exile now, so he's been traveling for quite some time and more than likely feeling a bit weary and weak. They don't have food. We'll see the answer to that later. They don't have great strength, but they knew they had to get out of Jerusalem because Absalom was just coming back, as well as Hushai coming back at the same time. And so he tells us there in verse 2, and all the people who are with him will flee. All the people that are with David. If I arise and I pursue David tonight, I have 12,000 men with me. It says that all those people that are with him are going to take off. They're going to flee. And he tells them, and I will strike only the king. Only David is who he's going to kill. And then he goes on, and all these people that had fled, he says, then I will bring back all the people to you when all return except the man whom you seek. And he's saying that Absalom obviously is seeking David. And all the people that he brings back, because David will be dead, he says they are going to be at peace. So it says the saying pleased Absalom and all the elders of Israel. So this is his second opportunity in giving Absalom some counsel. This is what we need to do. Now, this was something definitely on Absalom's mind. How can we get rid of David? He's done. I'm done with him as a dad. I'm done with him in all of his trying to compete with me as being the king now. But he wasn't the king. But that's what people were saying. Remember, David was saying he was the king. So it wasn't like some shocker. It was just how David, because of his lack of being the man that he once was, he's no longer that guy. And it's going to come up here when Hushai begins to tell David the counsel. Or tell Absalom the counsel as far as why this is not a good idea this time by Ahithophel. He didn't ask Hushai for his advice at the first one, going into the concubines and all that. But that's why Hushai was here, and that was to counter the counsel of Ahithophel, to make his counsel look foolish to Absalom so that he wouldn't take the counsel. So here's as we go forward. Having had success, again, the first counseling sessions that he had with Absalom, the advice now in chapter 17 to him was that he would get together 12,000 men and overtake David and kill him unexpectedly. And bring all of those followers of David back to Jerusalem. Now again, in some people's mind, this might look like such a great thing. What a great guy. Who would ever do that for Absalom? I mean, Absalom needs to get his own guys, and he needs to figure out, hey, Ahithophel's there to give you the plan, but you need to make it work. You need to get the guys in the right place. He says, I'll do it for you. And it might have looked like he was just being a great guy. Again, this could be used for this reason, that if we don't kill David, bring all of his men back to Jerusalem with us, and may all be in peace again. In other words, that they're all now on Absalom's team, or part of his army now. If we don't do something like this, it was very wise counsel. He says, if we don't do this, and David stays there, and he stays with all the men that he took, there's going to be a civil war. Because remember, many people stayed with David. But we know what happened with Absalom. Absalom had won over the hearts of the people. and many people bailed out on David. So there was two very distinct, different groups. Those who were still faithful and loving David, knowing that he was the king anointed by God. And there was the other group of people that Absalom had won over to himself and to being a part of his army. Now, again, it would present the opportunity for a civil war between Absalom and his followers and David and his followers. But again, I don't think that still was what the motivation was in this second council. You see, it's getting to a place now where Ahithophel, having this background with David and his granddaughter and what happened to his granddaughter Bathsheba, the anger and the hatred and the bitterness, it just keeps growing. And I've been there. I know that feeling. I don't like it, but I've had it in my life where someone, initially it hurt, and then all of a sudden it just continued to grow, and my being hurt turned into this hatred or this anger. And then this anger, all of a sudden it began to turn into this hatred. And I don't know if I could go as far as saying I wish they were dead, but I would have to say that more than likely it might have slipped in there just a little bit. That's what happens. That's what happens when we allow those things to rule. Even though it might be absolutely right on your part of why you feel the way you do, if you're not careful, it could turn into something just like Saul, just like Ahithophel, to where, again, these are horrible things that took place. And yet, if we don't take control of those things, and that self-control, it is part of God's Holy Spirit in our lives living in us. If we don't take control of those things will take control of us. And they do. But God gives us the out. He says, with every single thought that you have, you need to bring it into the captivity of Jesus Christ. You need to be able to take that and dump it off at the foot of the cross. Now, it's still not easy, but I'll guarantee you this, if you begin to do those things, it's going to become lighter. It's going to become less possible that you would get to that place of bitterness so far that you wish death on someone. And so this is where Ahithophel is. His motivation for this second counsel that he's giving to Absalom, it's motivated by the hatred that turned to bitterness that got him on track for what's happening right now. What he's saying, I will take 12,000 men and I will go find David. We'll pull everybody else out. David will be by himself and I'm going to kill him. I'm going to wipe him out. But you see, again, it wasn't that Absalom had a different idea or that Hushai had a different idea. It's that God had a different idea. And you see, when God's in the equation, it doesn't matter what these guys are thinking are going to be the best thing and way to go. It's going to be God's way. And God has his whole hand on this whole situation, as he does in our own lives. He has all of his hands upon our situation and knows exactly what's been done and the wrong that's been done. And he is going to take care of it in his perfect time and in his vengeance, not allowing us to do it in our own vengeance. So sure enough, that's what it was leading to. And in Ahithophel's mind, he's saying, hey, just so you know, Absalom, I'm doing this all for you, to make your life better, to make your life not have someone like David in your life that you don't have to worry about anymore. No, that's not true. It might have sounded really good, but again, he wanted to do what he wanted to do, what he thought would be good. And if he told it good enough to Absalom, then he would go along with it, as he did with the concubines. Again, it was a complete different reason why Ahithophel suggested that he do that. David, or Absalom, again, he's just following. He didn't ask questions or anything. He just said, oh, okay, well, that's cool. Then you say that, and that sounds pretty good, so I guess I'll go do that. Now, again, he did it for his own lustful, selfish pleasures, but Ahithophel, it was for a whole different reason. And that was trying to destroy David's reputation and David's life in everything that he did. Now, here's the deal, is that this time around, Absalom wanted another opinion. So as we read on here, he says in verse 5, then Absalom said, now call Hushai the Archite also, and let us hear what he says to do. So this is kind of new, right? And verses 5 through 14, I'm going to read it. We'll come back a little bit. He says, and Absalom called Hushai and asked him what he says to do. And so he says, and when Hushai came to Absalom, that was the reason why he was there, remember? Absalom spoke to him saying, this is what Ahithophel says. Ahithophel has spoken in this manner. Shall we do as he says? If not, speak up. So he's told him Ahithophel's plan. And now Hushai, man, he's got to think quick. How's he going to figure out a plan within just a few seconds? But he was quick. And he had the ability to kind of respond quickly to him. So Hushai, as he said to speak up, Hushai speaks up. And he said to Absalom, the advice that Ahithophel has given you is not good at this time. Now remember why he was sent there. He's sent there by David, his friend, to do this very thing, to make Ahithophel's counsel look foolish to Absalom so that he will do what you want him to do, Hushai, in the thought and in the safety of David and the army. So he says, it's not good at this time. For, said Hushai, you know your father and his men, that they are mighty men, and they are enraged in their minds like a bear robbed by her cubs. Listen how good it is, man. He's like quick, right? He's like getting on it. He's like, man, remember who David was. And that's really what he could have said, but he didn't. He's saying, remember who David is. Now, this is a long time later. And quite frankly, David's not that man anymore. David's been running, he's been hiding, he's been doing all the things opposite that he would have done back in the beginning of his time of ministry, but also even now as he's in exile. He says, you know your father and his men are mighty men, and they are enraged in their minds like a bear robbed by her cubs in the field. And your father is a man of war, and he will not camp with the people. Surely by now he is hidden in some pit or in some other place, and it will be when some of them are overthrown, like when they attack some of your people and they're dead. He says at the first that whoever hears it will say, there is slaughter among the people who follow Absalom. Absalom's people are dying. So you see the setup, right? Now again, he had to be quick at this. And this is super important as we read a little bit through this, okay? Having to think quickly, Hushai gives a different advice to Absalom, to give David more time to escape. And just as David had prayed, if you remember that prayer back in chapter 15, verse 31 through 36, he told him there of what his purpose was going to be in turning Ahithophel's counsel into foolishness. So Hushai, again, is telling Absalom what needs to do. So then he continues on in verse 8. And he says, now looking back at what David once was, hoping that Absalom would remember his dad and his valiant life that he led, being a true warrior and someone of great power. Looking back at what David once was, hoping that he would remember just how bad his dad really was. And I don't mean bad like in trouble bad. I'm talking about bad, like one bad dude. He was amazing. And they all knew this, and everybody knew this. They were amazed by David and his strength. Well, Hushai then goes on reminding him about more. He's reminding Absalom about those things. Again, this was not the same David at this time right now that Absalom is listening to Hushai. But the memory he's trying to stir up to remind him just how amazing David really is and what he once was. In fact, he ran from Jerusalem and was currently in exile. You might call David at this point a has-been. You know how many stories I've told to people over the last maybe 40 years of my life about what an amazing baseball player I was. And I played Angel Stadium, and I played in a college championship. Man, it was good, man. You know what? Thank God for my children and my wife who remind me, Pop, you're has-been, man. It's over. And, some of us might be in that stage right now of thinking, and reality is we're not there. Well, David was in this place. And as all of this is happening, he tells them in verse 9 that they're probably already hiding out. They're waiting to jump you. They've already gotten to the place that they want to be, and now they're going to lure you there, already finding a place to hide out for that surprise ambush or attack. And many of Absalom's army were going to get wiped out. Well, he goes on, and that's where he says in verse 9, surely by now he's hidden in some pit or in some other place. And it will be when some of them are overthrown at the first that whoever hears it will say, there is a slaughter among the people who follow Absalom, and even he who is valiant, whose heart is like the heart of a lion, will melt. It doesn't matter how bad those guys are. Absalom and his army are going down. For all Israel knows that your father is a mighty man, and those who are with him are valiant men. Therefore, sets it all up very nicely, doesn't he? They're looking good. Therefore, I advise that all Israel be fully gathered to you, Absalom, from Dan to Beersheba, like the sand that is by the sea for multitude, and that you go to battle in person. Oh, man. Now, there's a little spark of interest, appealing to his vanity. Oh, but Absalom, you have to be there. Without you, they won't be able to do this. You need to make sure that you go to battle in person. Now again, man, when we have issues with thinking we're something, before we get to the second part of that scripture, when we think we're something, it doesn't take much for someone to tell us how good we are about something. Oh, you think so? Oh, you know what? Hey, thanks, Rick. Yeah, I'm going to go, man. I'm going to go for it and do it because I am everything that everyone's telling me I am. No, you're not. So we will come upon him in some place where he may be found, and we will fall on him as the dew falls on the ground. And of him all the men who are with him there shall not be left so much as one. Man, we will destroy it all. So again, as he goes on further, moreover, if he has withdrawn into the city, then all Israel shall bring ropes to the city, to that city, and we will pull it into the river until there is not one small stone found there. So Absalom and all the men of Israel said what? The advice of Hushai, the Archite, is better than the advice of Ahithophel. Now this sends Ahithophel spinning until finally something he does affects him for the rest of his life. He goes on and he says, this advice is better than Ahithophel's. Listen, for the Lord had a purpose to defeat the good advice of Ahithophel. The Lord took that good advice of Ahithophel and made it bad, made it confusing. And yet we see it was the Lord that had his hand in this whole thing to defeat the good advice of Ahithophel, to the intent that the Lord might bring disaster on Absalom. As a judgment upon Absalom. God is using it in this way for that particular reason. And then Hushai said to Zadok and Abiathar, you remember who they are, right? The priests that had brought the ark across the river, only to be told, take it back and set up the way of communication for me, that when you hear something, send your boys to me so I can know what their strategy and their plan is. Well, that's what's taking place here in verse 15. Hushai said to Zadok and Abiathar the priests, thus and so Ahithophel advised Absalom and the elders of Israel, and thus, it says, and so I have advised. So Ahithophel had advised something, but so have I. And because of what I advised, Absalom is going for it. So he says, now therefore send quickly and tell David, saying, do not spend this night in the plains of the wilderness, but speedily cross over the Jordan River, lest the king and all the people who are with him be swallowed up. And now Jonathan and Ahimaaz, they stayed at En-Rogel, for they dared not be seen coming into the city, Jerusalem. So a female servant would come and tell them, and they would go and tell the King David. So it's all coming about a little different, but still the same process or the same protocol, just a little different in the way that it was going to take place. So the word went immediately to Zadok and Abiathar, the high priest, to let David know what was going on and what he needed to do. He needed to cross the Jordan River and escape from where he was at that time, to escape into safety. The priest would give the word to the female servant to take to the outskirts of the city where the two brothers of the priest were, or the two sons of the priest were. And that was where the sons then were staying. Well, now, as this whole thing's going down, there's a lad that saw the secret meeting and reported it to Absalom. Notice what he goes on to say. They were in En-Rogel, for they dared not be seen coming into the city. So a female servant would come and tell them, and they would go to tell King David. Nevertheless, a lad saw them and told Absalom, but both of them went away quickly and came to a man's house in Bahurim, who had a well in his court. So the lad saw the little secret spy meeting, right? And they end up taking off. the lad goes back to tell Absalom about it. They end up going further then, and they found a man's house in Bahurim who had a well in his court. And they went down into the well, or the cistern. Then the woman took a spread, and covering over the well's mouth, or the cistern's mouth, she spread the covering over it. She then spread ground grain on top of it. And the thing was not known. You couldn't tell what it really was. It looked like something where there was just grain, ground grain that was sitting on this space. So he sees the secret meeting. He reports it back to Absalom. The two sons find a place to hide out for a time until Absalom sends his troops down, his spies down, to try to find these two people, these two boys, or these two young men. So they stayed in that cistern or in that well until the search parties had passed by. And then they ended up going back because they couldn't find anything. They ended up going back to Jerusalem. And Jonathan and Ahimaaz, they beat it to David. They go where David is at and tells him everything that's going on. So he goes on then into verse 20. And when Absalom's servant came to the woman at the house, they said, "Where are Ahimaaz and Jonathan?" So the woman said to them, "They've gone over the water, the Jordan River, and when they had searched and could not find them, they returned to Jerusalem." So she just basically, they went that way. And they split. They were gone. They're looking for them, and they weren't able to find. Now it came to pass that after they had departed, that they came up out of the well and went and told King David and said to David, "Arise and cross over the water quickly, for thus has Ahithophel advised against you." So David and all the people who were with him rose and crossed over the Jordan. And by morning light, not one of them was left who had not gone over the Jordan. So then every single person was with him. And now Ahithophel saw that his advice was not followed. Now he had advice that was good. It was going to work. But the Lord changed it. The Lord changed that direction, right? We saw that earlier. God's hand was in this. And the very thing that Hushai was supposed to have done was successful at it. And it all worked exactly how they planned it. They had to wait a little bit longer, but they were smart enough to get in a well or a cistern, something put over them. They were protected. No one knew where they were. They just had to be quiet. Well, then he goes on, and he says in verse 21, right? Now it came to pass after they had departed that they came out of the well, went and told King David, and he said to David, "Arise and cross over the water or the river quickly, for thus Ahithophel advised against you." So David and all the people who were with him arose and crossed over the Jordan. By morning light, not one of them was left who had not gone over the Jordan. Now when Ahithophel saw, that's actually where I'm at, is in verse 23. When Ahithophel saw that his advice was not followed, he saddled a donkey and arose, and he went home to his house, to his city. Then he put his household in order. Now, what do you think? You think that Ahithophel was kind of bummed out and mad? He took my first counsel. Why didn't he take my... Do you think that was what this was all about? Ahithophel just couldn't believe it. his counsel of what he was there for, and he used to be there for David too, that it's been rejected? No, see, Ahithophel knew. He knew that his counsel was what was going to work. David would have been dead, and it would have been fine. But the plans changed. His concern was more, I'm sure it kind of had to bruise him a little bit in his little ego and, his self-esteem and all those other words that people use today, that he was not the man anymore, that he took this Hushai's word. So he knew too, though, again, that was going to bring a victory to Absalom. Absalom went the wrong way. And even though he was so wise, Hushai's plan would bring the victory to David. Well, Ahithophel didn't want to be any part of it now. He didn't want to be called in for, conspiracy things that maybe Ahithophel did this, and that's why all this happened the way that it did. He wanted no blame for what was going to happen next. And so what did he do? He put his household in order, and he hanged himself and died. Now, they always use this as a type of Judas Iscariot comparison. But he was buried in his father's tomb. Then David went to Mahanaim, and Absalom crossed over the Jordan, he and all the men of Israel with him. So now Absalom is on the search. He's ready to go. Doesn't have a clue about Ahithophel right now. But now as Absalom crosses over the Jordan, he puts another guy, his name is Amasa, who became the commander for Absalom. David's nephew, a first cousin to Joab, and he put him in charge instead of Joab. So he goes on, he says that they also had all the men of Israel with him. In verse 25, and Absalom made Amasa captain of the army instead of Joab. This Amasa was the son of a man whose name was Jithra, an Israelite who had gone into Abigail, the daughter of Nahash, sister of Zeruiah, Joab's mother. So Israel and Absalom encamped in the land of Gilead. Then he goes on into verse 27. Now it happened when David had come to Mahanaim that Shobi, the son of Nahash, where'd he go? There he is. From Rabbah of the people of Ammon, Mashir, the son of Amiel from Lo-Debar, and Barzillai, the Gileadite from Rogelim. Okay, so the purpose or the importance of these three guys he's going to tell us. They brought beds and basins and earthen vessels and wheat. You might say it's the Meals on Wheels of those days. And these three particular people are what they were really known for in providing for David and all of the people that were him. They were the helps ministry. They were the benevolence ministry, whichever one you want to choose. But they brought beds and basins and earthen vessels and wheat, barley and flour and parched grain and beans and lentils and parched seeds, honey and curds and sheep and cheese of the herd for David and the people. It was for David and the people they brought all these things who were with him to eat. For they said, the people are hungry and weary and thirsty in the wilderness. So these people, these three men came to him with all of these non-perishable foods, providing for him and all of the people. They helped David and the people in their greatest time of need. Now, again, God had something to do with this. God brought comfort to David in this time of great affliction that he was experiencing. Shobi, by birth an alien, he cared more for Israel's kings than most of the Jews did. Likewise, many Gentiles had received him, who was rejected by his own, which we know that story about Jesus, right? Then there was Mashir, one known for their hospitality, cared for Mephibosheth for many years in his life. And Barzillai helped sustain David the entire time that he was in Mahanaim. And he was a very wealthy man, and his support meant a lot to King David. And you go to, we'll see it hopefully tonight. We'll see it next week in chapter 19. And where he talks about that. When David was on his deathbed, David told Solomon to elevate the sons of Barzillai to places of royal court. Like that was the relationship that had been built, not just with Barzillai, but with his children as they got older, having the same type of servant's heart. How incredible is that? So let's see, we finished chapter 17, and we got time, man. Can you believe it? And David numbered the people who were with him and set captains of thousands and captains of hundreds over them. He's going to break it up into thirds, he says in verse 2. Then David sent out 1/3 of the people under the hand of Joab, 1/3 under the hand of Abiashai, and the other third, the son of Abishai, the son of Zeruiah, but the other third will be under the hand of Ittai, the Gittite, and we'd seen him before. And the king said to the people, I also will surely go out with you myself. Now, I don't know about you, but if people said, no, we'd rather not have you go. We're good without you. You're kind of getting up there in age, and you're a little bit slower, and you might shoot one of us or hack us with a sword or something. Well, that's not what they're saying. The people answered and said this, you shall not go out, for if we flee away, nobody's going to care. They will not care about us. Nor if half of us die, will they really care about us? They're not going to care about us. But you, David, are worth 10,000 of us now. For you are now more help to us in the city. Then the king said to them, hey, whatever seems best to you, I'll do it. So whether he just wasn't going to argue about it, or he's like, yeah, kind of feeling like some muscles in my back tightening up anyway, right? So he stood beside the gate, and all the people went out by hundreds and by thousands. And now the king had commanded Joab, Abishai, and Ittai, saying, now here's where David again, he keeps falling short with some of the things. Deal gently for my sake with the young man Absalom. Most would say, just like when Saul and David were having their issues, and all the time David's guys are telling him, he's right there. Kill him. Like, this can't be a better plan, my God. In the cave, he's right there. Just take the sword and stuff it, put it through his heart. No, we're not going to do that. We're not going to touch God's anointed, right? But here's the deal. David tells them to deal gently with Absalom. And it says that all the people heard when the king gave all the captains orders concerning Absalom. So that's going to be a very important part of the story. Everyone heard it. Now they're either going to follow their general and whatever their general says to do, or they're going to remember that one little thing that David had said, deal gently with my son Absalom. Now I would think, oh, it's because he wants him to come back and he wants to take him out behind the shed and give him a whooping, straighten him out. But the thing is, he's not done that yet. He's been in many situations where he could have done that. And the reality is, he was telling, for 2 years, he didn't even see his son. He let him back into the land, but he didn't even see his son. Never even let him set his eyes on him. And then said, when you did first bring him back for those 2 years, he's not going to have to, go to court on what he's done. Well, David just continues to make choices, but at the same time, and I don't know, I've never been in that situation, but it was his son. And there's something about a son or a daughter, even that have gone astray, that are the prodigals. And it breaks our hearts. It breaks people's hearts to see that happen. And they give them chance after chance. Yeah, they moved in again. But they said this time it's going to be different. Oh, yeah, they said they're not going to do this and that anymore. They're going to start paying and, just to get them back on their feet. And this is only going to be for a short time. And some people in my own life, I know, it's now only 34 years later, they're still living in my mom's house. And it was only going to be for a couple months, like years ago. And so you can understand maybe to some extent just this love that he has for his son, but at the same time realizing his own sin that still is in the back of his mind of what goes on and what's been going on. Well, then we come to the closer part of the end. They tell him that you're not going to go out with us. You're worth way more in value to us and to our people than you coming out here and potentially getting taken out. And so he settled for it. And then David's army, moving forward in verse 4, he says, whatever seems best you all do. So the king stood beside at the gate, and the people went out, hundreds and thousands. And the king commanded Joab and Abishai and Ittai, diligently for my sake with my young man Absalom. And the people heard when the king gave all the captain's orders concerning Absalom. So the people went out into the field of battle against Israel. And the battle was in the woods. Now this is crazy. I guess you can picture going further over the mountain. Picture yourself going into the timberland up there. And all the crazy trees and everything before they have been trimmed back and a burn done for the year, to keep it from flaming up more, more sparks and more fires. If you think about something like that, or even in oak woods, how those trees, they go all different kinds of ways. The people went into the field for battle against Israel, and the battle was in the woods of Ephraim. The people of Israel were overthrown there before the servants of David. So in other words, David's army did well in that environment, and Absalom's army didn't do well. They couldn't fight in that. They got tripped up. They got stuck in the actual wood or the trees and the timber trees and things like that. It says the people of Israel were overthrown there before the servants of David, and a great slaughter, listen, of 20,000 took place there that day. For the battle there was scattered over the face of the whole countryside, and the woods devoured people that day than the sword. The woods did more death and brought more death than the swords did. They couldn't even swing the swords around because of all the different branches and everything else that was clouding their sight. Getting stuck in the ravines, getting stuck in the branches. I mean, imagine that. Well, David's army crushed the people of Israel. 20,000. And as I said, most of it, they died in the woods where it had trapped the soldiers. And they just came along and took them out. They couldn't move anywhere. Well, then he goes on into verse 8. For the battle there was scattered over the face of the whole countryside, and the woods devoured more people that day than the sword devoured. Then Absalom met the servants of David. And so Absalom rode on a mule, and the mule went under the thick boughs, right? I was practicing that all day. Was I going to call it bows or bows? It's bows. Yeah, that's what I thought. Well, anyway, the mule went under those things, and they were thick, of a great terebinth tree, and his head caught in the terebinth tree. So he was hanging. He was left hanging between heaven and earth. In other words, his feet weren't touching the ground, and there was nothing above him. That's where he was at. He was stuck under the thick boughs of this great terebinth tree. And it says, and the mule, which was under him, took off. It went on. Like nothing, right? So we see now a great dilemma. Absalom hanging in a tree, still alive. Okay? So as he was fleeing again, this takes place, we don't need to read it again. But I did say, remember, he had this beautiful set of hair on his head. Good looking guy. And could have been the very thing that caught him in the trap that he's in now. It doesn't say hair. It could have been his head went through a couple of branches, and the next thing you know, it kind of choked him out. And now he's hanging there and he can't do anything about it. But regardless of whatever it was, he's hanging out in a tree. It said the great terebinth tree, having thick boughs of great terebinth tree, and his head was caught in the terebinth tree, so he was left hanging between heaven and earth, and the mule which was under him went on. Now a certain man saw it and told Joab and said, I just saw Absalom hanging in a terebinth tree. So Joab said to the man who told him, you just saw him? And why did you not kill him? Why did you not strike him there to the ground? And the guy's answer, I would have given, Joab is telling him, I would have given you 10 shekels of silver and a military belt, like something that is so honoring and showing your incredible effort in the military. You could have had this belt that no one else has. But notice what the guy says. But the man said to Joab, though I were to receive 1,000 shekels of silver in my hand, and he says, I would not raise my hand against the king's son. For in our hearing, we all heard it, the king commanded you and Abishai and Ittai, saying, beware lest anyone touch the young man, Absalom. Otherwise, I would have dealt falsely against my own life, for there is nothing hidden from the king, and you yourself would have set yourself again. You wouldn't have even stood up for me. When they finally said, who is the one that saw it and killed him? And Joab would have said, this guy right here, he's the one that did it. I didn't do it. He did it. He said, you won't even stand up for me if that day were to come. And Joab said, I cannot linger with you. And he took 3 spears in his hands and he thrust them through Absalom's heart. Really just talking about his chest, not the actual heart of his body, because he was still alive in the midst of the terebinth tree. And 10 young men who bore Joab's armor surrounded Absalom. An interesting 10. There was the 10 concubines, and now we have 10 young men that are going to be the ones responsible. And they struck and they killed him. So Joab blew the trumpet, and the people returned from pursuing Israel, for Joab held back the people. So what happened is he called off the war. The war's over. The battle's over. Come back. And all the other people, the Israel's people and Absalom's people, they all retreated back to their tents. They were gone. Everyone went away and ran for their lives. Well, it says, verse 16, 17, for Joab held back the people, and they took Absalom and cast him in a large pit in the woods. Now we'll see, this is a guy that made himself a monument because he had no heirs. His sons had all died. And he was so into himself that he's going to make sure his name lived on forever. And to this day, it says it's called Absalom's monument. But right here, they're putting him in a hole. And they took Absalom, they cast him into a large pit in the woods and laid a very large heap of stones over him. And then all Israel fled, everyone to his tent. That's when they were done, they were gone, they were back to their own city and tents where they were. Now Absalom, in his lifetime, had taken and set up a pillar for himself, which is in the king's valley. For he said, I have no son to keep my name in remembrance. He called the pillar after his own name. Such an arrogant guy. And to this day, it's called Absalom's monument. Then Ahimaaz, the son of Zadok, said, let me run now and take the news to the king, to King David. Now, again, Ahimaaz is one of the sons of the priests, and he happens to be the one that is known as the good news boy. He was the one, whenever he would talk or he would give information about anywhere and whatever was going on, he was always the one telling about the good news. And so he didn't want him to go. He says in verse 19, Ahimaaz, the son of Zadok, said, let me run and take the news to the king, how the Lord has avenged him, vindicated him of his enemies. Now, again, that was not the king's desire. He wanted him coming back alive. And Joab said to him, you shall not take the news this day, for you shall take the news another day. But today you shall take no news, because the king's son is dead, meaning that it's going to be bad news, right? So he's simply just trying to, and sure enough, we'll see, because it tells it, when all of a sudden he sees in the distance, and this guy ends up, he lets him go, and then all of a sudden he's a fast runner, so he ends up beating the Cushite person, and they see him in a distance, and they said, what was his name again? Ahimaaz. He goes, hey, here comes Ahimaaz. Oh, and so David's going, right on, it must be good news, because he was the good news boy, right? Let me actually read it and tell you, instead of giving you the story. So he goes on and he says, but today you shall not take the news, because the king's son is dead. And then Joab said to the Cushite, go tell the king what you have seen. So the Cushite bowed himself to Joab and he ran. And Ahimaaz, the son of Zadok, said again to Joab, but whatever happens, please let me also run after the Cushite. So Joab said, why will you run, my son? Now notice, he's got a head start. All this talking going on. Since you have no news ready. You don't have any news that's going to be told. That'll be different than the Cushite or more details. But whatever happens, he said, let me run. So he said to him, run. Then Ahimaaz ran by way of the plain and outran the Cushite. And David was sitting between the two gates where he's been waiting as a watchman for the people to come back. And the watchman went up to the roof over the gate to the wall, and he lifted up his eyes and looked. And there was a man running alone. Then the watchman cried out and he told the king. And the king said, if he's alone, there is news in his mouth. And he came rapidly and drew near. Then the watchman saw another man running, and the watchman called to the gatekeeper and said, there is another man running alone. And the king said, he also brings news. So two guys bringing news. So the watchman said, I think the running of the first person is like the running of Ahimaaz, the son of Zadok. And the king said, he is a good man and comes with good news. That was his reputation. So he must have good news this time. So Ahimaaz called out and said to the king, all is well. And then he bowed down with his face to the earth before the king. And he said, blessed be the Lord your God, who has delivered up the men who raised their hand against my lord the king. The king said, he didn't ask, is the soldiers okay? Is everyone else all right? Is David okay? No one. Is the young man Absalom safe? Ahimaaz answered, well, when Joab sent the king's servant and me, your servant, I saw the great tumult, but I did not know what it was about. He's got no news. No, he knew what happened. But he's now afraid to let him know. And he knew what it was about. Verse 30, and the king said, turn aside and stand here. Get out of the way, Ahimaaz, because here comes the other runner. He's got news too. Turn aside and stand here. So he turned aside and he stood still. Just then the Cushite came. And the Cushite said, there is good news, my lord the king, for the Lord has avenged you this day of all those who rose against you. Now again, not just killing all the army of Israel. So the Cushite answered, So the king said to the Cushite, is the young man Absalom safe? So the Cushite answered, may the enemies of my lord, the ones that are dead, the king, may the enemies of my lord the king and all who rise against you to do harm be like that young man. Be like Absalom. He's dead. Then King David was deeply moved, and he went up to the chamber over the gate, and he wept. And he said thus, O my son Absalom, O my son Absalom, my son Absalom, if only I had died in your place. O Absalom, my son, my son. Now we know what that sounds familiar to, right? Jesus Christ dying in our place. How cool is that? It's amazing. That verse 33 is pretty heavy, and it got me thinking a lot about our prodigals or people that have prodigals. I mean, we have prodigals in this church. And David, as he learns about the place of his son now being taken, his life being taken, probably never forgave Joab for what he had done. And one of the greatest griefs that he would have ever had in his life was this experience. And if Absalom had lived, he would have probably let him off again. Somehow, some way. There's just that happens so much and so many times in people's lives. It's like the sanctuary cities or parents who always stick up for their children and never holding them accountable and never holding people accountable for their crimes and for their breaking of the law in so many different ways. That it's just okay. They're going to get better on their own. That the discipline has to be there. I love what Spurgeon said. I took these from someone else, but they're for all of us. And he said, he might have said, "Is the young man Absalom dead? For if he is out of the way, there will be peace to my realm and rest to my troubled life." But he didn't. But no, he as a father, and he as a father must love his own offspring. It is a father that speaks, and a father's love that can survive the enmity of a son. One more quote that he had was, "Our children, they may plunge into the worst of sins, but they're our children still. They may scoff at our God. They may tear our heart to pieces with their wickedness. We cannot take complacency in them. But at the same time, we cannot unchild them, nor erase their image from our hearts." A pretty interesting way to end it with his quotes. Next week, chapter 19. Let's pray. Lord, thank you so much for this time. Thank you for getting us through these chapters, Lord, and just amazing testimony, amazing stories that you've told, and things that had happened in history, Lord, of all the misunderstandings and the wicked hearts and the lies that continue, Lord, and how in the midst of all of it, you have a perfect plan to work out your perfection, Lord, and your salvation in all of our lives, Lord. And so we thank you, ask that you take us home safely, and just bless the rest of our night. In Jesus' name, amen. All right, you guys, have a great rest of your evening. Until we meet.